The command center of the Salvation's Edge hummed with the kind of bored energy that came from 3 months of absolutely nothing happening. Commander Zek'mar stood at the central console, his 4 arms crossed in what he hoped looked like authority, staring at a holographic display that made him want to retire early. "All right, everyone, listen up," he announced, his voice carrying across the cramped bridge. "We have received our assignment for this sector." Thren, the pilot, swiveled in his chair with the enthusiasm of someone watching paint dry. His green-scaled face held an expression of terminal disinterest. "Let me guess, boss. Another mineral survey? Or wait, no, let me get excited. Maybe we get to catalog space dust again." "Specimen retrieval," Zek'mar said flatly. "Keeks?" The weapons officer actually laughed. She was a tall, mantis-like being with too many joints in her arms and a personality that suggested she enjoyed her job way too much. "Oh, come on. They sent us a military vessel with enough firepower to level a small moon, to play fetch." One specimen, Zek'mar continued, pulling up the mission details. "Human, female, age approximately 43 standard cycles. Located on the planet designated Earth, third rock from their star. Mostly harmless." The entire crew burst into laughter. Thorn, the medic, who looked like someone had stretched a salamander to person height and given it a medical degree, wiped at his enormous eyes. "A human? One human? Sir, with respect, my grandmother could handle that mission, and she has been dead for 6 years. Soft pink things," Thren added, grinning. "I saw the files once. They do not even have proper scales or exoskeletons. Just like skin. Fragile, squishy skin that tears if you look at it wrong. They wear clothing because their own bodies cannot regulate temperature properly." Kix chimed in, warming to the subject. "What kind of apex species needs to wrap themselves in dead plant fibers just to not die from their own weather?" Zek'mar held up one hand. Yes, very amusing. "The Galactic Council wants a live specimen for, quote, cultural integration studies, end quote. We go down, we retrieve the target, we leave, simple, clean. We will be done before the next meal cycle." "This is an insult," Kix muttered. "I trained for 7 years at the Imperial War Academy. I have fought in actual combat situations, and now I am being sent to grab a human like I am some kind of animal control officer. The pay is the same regardless," Zek'mar pointed out. "There is that," she admitted. Zek'mar pulled up the research files, and his confusion immediately became everyone's confusion. The holographic display flickered through page after page of Earth's biological database, and with each entry the crew's amusement turned into bewilderment. Wait, stop," Thren said, holding up a clawed hand. "Go back. What was that thing called?" "A hippopotamus," Zek'mar read from the file. "Herbivore. Kills approximately 500 humans per year. Territorial. Aggressive. Can run at 30 kilometers per hour, despite weighing 4,000 kilograms. Silence. Their grass eaters kill them?" Vaughn asked slowly. "Apparently so," Zek'mar confirmed, scrolling further. "Oh, here is another one. The cassowary. A flightless bird that can disembowel a human with its claws. Lives in their forests. Humans consider it, quote, slightly dangerous, end quote." "Slightly," Kix repeated. "It can remove their internal organs and they call it slightly dangerous." "Look at this one," Thren said, pointing at another entry. "A goose. It is called a goose. It weighs maybe 6 kilograms, and humans are apparently terrified of them. There are thousands of videos in their data networks of humans fleeing from geese. Why would they run from something they could simply step on?" Vaughn asked. "No idea," Zek'mar admitted. He kept scrolling. "Here is my personal favorite. The honey badger. Small mammal. Fights animals 50 times its size. Does not care about pain. Quote, the honey badger does not give a single care, end quote. That is the actual scientific notation. The crew stared at the hologram in stunned silence. "What kind of planet is this?" Kix finally asked. Zek'mar noticed the warning labels then. They were stamped across the human specimen file in bright red text. "Extreme caution, advised. Deathworlder species. Persistence, predator. Endurance off standard charts. Psychological unpredictability high. Bureaucratic nonsense, Thren said dismissively. You know how Central Command is? They put warning labels on everything. Last month they marked a shipment of cleaning supplies as hazardous. Those cleaning supplies did melt through the hull, Vaughn pointed out. Exactly. They overlabel everything. This is clearly more of the same. Look at them. Thren gestured at an image of a smiling human family. They look like soft prey animals, big eyes, flat faces, tiny teeth. I have seen more threatening creatures in petting zoos. Zek'mar wanted to argue, but looking at the image, he had to agree. The humans looked, well, harmless. Cute even, in that weird way that prey species sometimes were. All right, he said, closing the files. Let us get this over with. Thren set course for the target coordinates. Kix, prepare stun weapons only. We want her alive and undamaged. Vaughn, ready the holding cell and whatever sedatives work on carbon-based biology. On it, boss, Thren said, already plotting the approach vector. This is going to be the easiest assignment of our careers, Kix predicted, checking her weapon's charge. Zek'mar looked at the warning labels one more time before closing the display. Something nagged at him, some instinct that had kept him alive through 2 decades of military service. He ignored it. That would turn out to be a mistake. The Salvation's Edge touched down in a field that smelled, quite frankly, terrible. Zek'mar wrinkled his nose as the landing ramp extended into what appeared to be recently fertilized soil. Is that smell normal for this planet? Vaughn asked, gagging slightly. According to the files, yes. Zek'mar confirmed. They spread animal waste on their crops intentionally. To help things grow. Barbarians, Kix muttered. Their target was visible immediately. A human female, mid-40s by Earth standards, wearing something called denim and a faded shirt with text that read, I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right. She was bent over a fence post, hammering something with focused determination. That is her? Thren asked. She looks, I do not know, normal? Morgan Chen, Zek'mar confirmed, checking his data pad. Age 43. Occupation, farmer. No military training, no combat experience. Should be straightforward. They approached in standard formation, weapons drawn, looking, Zek'mar had to admit, quite intimidating. 4 armed aliens in tactical gear, flanking their target. This should have been over in seconds. Morgan looked up from her fence post. She did not scream. She did not run. She did not even look particularly surprised. Instead, she sighed. The kind of deep, soul-weary sigh that suggested the universe had personally wronged her, and said, Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Zek'mar blinked. Ah, greetings, human. You will come with us. We mean you no harm if you cooperate. Morgan straightened up, hammer still in hand, and looked them up and down with an expression that could only be described as profoundly unimpressed. Let me get this straight. Today, this actual day, my best laying hen went broody. My irrigation system decided to explode. I have got 30 feet of fence that needs replacing before my goats escape again, and now I have aliens. Are you serious right now? Very serious, Kix said, raising her stun weapon. Now if you would just hold still. Hold still, Morgan repeated. Sure. Great. Perfect. Why not? My day was not complete without intergalactic kidnapping. She paused. Can you at least wait until tomorrow? I have got to fix this fence or the goats will be in the neighbor's garden again, and Linda already hates me. Fire, Zek'mar ordered. Kix pulled the trigger. The stun blast hit Morgan square in the chest with enough electrical charge to drop a Velian battle ox. Morgan staggered back 1 step, then 2. She looked down at the scorch mark on her shirt, then back up at them, and her expression shifted from annoyed to genuinely angry. This was my favorite shirt, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Why is she still standing? Kix whispered urgently. Fire again, Zek'mar commanded. Less confident now. The second blast hit Morgan in the shoulder. She grunted, grabbed the fence post for support and stayed upright. Okay, Morgan said, breathing hard. Okay, so that is how we are doing this. Fine, you want to play? Let us play. But I am telling you right now, I have had a terrible week. My back already hurts. I am out of coffee, and I am about 5 seconds away from making decisions that future me is going to regret. She looked at the hammer in her hand, then at them, calculating. You know what? The chickens need feeding anyway, Morgan said, and then she ran, not away from them, toward the large red barn. After her, Zek'mar shouted, and they gave chase. The barn was darker than expected, and it smelled even worse than the field. Zek'mar's eyes adjusted just in time to see Morgan disappear behind a stack of hay bales. Spread out, he ordered. She is cornered. That was when they met Admiral Cluckington. The rooster appeared from nowhere, a whirlwind of feathers and fury, and went straight for Thren's face. The pilot screamed, an undignified sound that would haunt him for years, as talons and beak found every exposed bit of his head. Get it off, Thren shrieked, stumbling backward. Get it off, get it off. It is just a bird, Kix yelled. But she made no move to help, clearly unwilling to get near the feathered nightmare currently trying to remove Thren's eyes. A dog barked, not a small dog. A very large dog, with the kind of bark that suggested it had opinions about strangers, and none of them were positive. Buck, a 70-kilogram mixed breed with teeth like daggers and a protective streak a mile wide, came around the corner at full speed. Shoot it, Zek'mar ordered. Kix fired. The blast went wide, missing Buck entirely, and hit a hay bale instead. The dried grass ignited immediately, because of course it did, and flames began spreading with enthusiastic speed. Oh, that is just perfect. Morgan's voice came from somewhere in the smoke and chaos. Now my barn is on fire. Do you have any idea how much hay costs? Buck had reached Vaughn, who discovered that his medical training had not prepared him for angry earth canines. He scrambled up a wooden support beam, clinging to it like his life depended on it, while Buck barked furiously below. This is insane, Vaughn shouted. We are trained military personnel. How are we losing to farm animals? Morgan emerged from the smoke carrying a chicken under each arm and a look of absolute fury on her face. You set my barn on fire. I just rebuilt this barn. Do you know how long that took? Do you capture her? Zek'mar commanded, but his crew was currently occupied with a rooster, a dog, and rapidly spreading flames. Thren had finally managed to dislodge Admiral Cluckington, but the rooster was not done. It landed, fluffed itself up to approximately twice its normal size through what had to be pure rage, and charged again. This is not happening, Thren muttered, backing away from a 3-kilogram bird. This is not actually happening. Morgan grabbed a pitchfork from the wall, testing its weight. The flames behind her created a backlight that made her look, frankly, terrifying. All right, gentlemen, she said, advancing on them with the pitchfork held in a way that suggested she knew exactly how to use it. Let us talk about property damage, emotional distress, and how you are going to pay for all of this. She has a weapon, Kix shouted, stating the obvious. We have weapons, Zek'mar shot back. Yes, and they do not work. Kix fired again. The blast hit Morgan in the leg. She stumbled, swore extensively using words that were not in their translation database, and kept coming. Buck was still barking. Admiral Cluckington was regrouping for another attack. The fire was spreading, and Morgan Chen, 43-year-old farmer with no combat training, was walking toward them with a pitchfork and an expression that promised violence. Retreat, Zek'mar finally ordered. Tactical retreat to the ship. We are running away, Thren asked, still fending off the rooster. We are strategically repositioning, Zek'mar corrected, already heading for the barn door. They fled. There was no other word for it. 4 trained military personnel fled from a barn, pursued by a woman with a pitchfork, a dog that thought it was protecting its pack, and a rooster that apparently had personal grievances. Behind them, Morgan stood in the doorway of her burning barn, silhouetted by flames, and shouted after them, "Yeah, you better run, and stay off my property." Zek'mar made it to the ship's ramp and looked back. The human was putting out the fire now using a hose, still muttering to herself about insurance and replacement costs. What, Thren said between gasps for air, just happened? I think, Vaughn said slowly, still trembling from his encounter with Buck. We might have misread the situation. You think? Kix snapped. Zek'mar stared at the warning labels in his datapad. Extreme caution advised, he read aloud. Deathworlder species. Maybe, Thren suggested quietly, we should have paid more attention to those. We are not giving up, Zek'mar announced, trying to salvage what remained of his dignity and his mission. New plan. We corner her in the dwelling. Enclosed space. No animals, no fire hazards. Simple. Nothing about this has been simple, Vaughn muttered, but he followed anyway. Morgan had retreated to her farmhouse, a modest structure that looked peaceful and welcoming with its flower boxes and front porch swing. They kicked in the door, weapons ready, prepared for anything, except for what they got. Morgan was standing in her kitchen, and she had armed herself with what could only be described as improvisational weaponry. A cast iron skillet in one hand, a can of something labeled Bear Strength pepper spray in the other, and a kitchen knife tucked into her belt that looked like it could field dress a small vehicle. You kicked in my door, she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. That door was original to the house. 1922. Do you know what original woodwork costs to replace? We just want to talk, Kix tried, though her weapon was still raised. Oh, now you want to talk, Morgan replied. After shooting me, setting my barn on fire, and terrorizing my animals, sure, let us have a chat. Come right in. Can I get you some tea? Maybe some cookies while we discuss your home invasion. Vaughn made the mistake of stepping forward. Morgan's hand came up with the pepper spray and fired in one smooth motion. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Vaughn screamed, a high-pitched wail of pure agony, and collapsed to the floor, clawing at his enormous eyes. I am blind. I am dying. What is this substance? It burns. Everything burns. It is pepper spray, you dramatic baby, Morgan said, advancing. It will wear off in about 45 minutes. Maybe. Thren tried to circle around through what appeared to be a living room. This was a mistake. Morgan had clearly spent her life collecting books, and they were everywhere, stacked on shelves that reached the ceiling. She grabbed a shelf support and pulled. The entire bookshelf came down like a tree in a forest, and Thren went down with it buried under approximately 200 kilograms of hardcover literature. My collection of mystery novels, Morgan announced. Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Louise Penny. You are being defeated by murder mysteries. How does that feel? Cannot breathe, Thren wheezed from under the books. Oh, you can breathe fine, Morgan said. Stop being dramatic. Kix fired her weapon again. The stun blast hit a metallic toaster, which exploded in a shower of sparks and sent smoking bread flying across the kitchen. That was a wedding gift, Morgan shouted, and then she was moving, faster than should have been possible for someone who had been shot 3 times with stun weapons. The cast iron skillet came around in an arc that would have made a professional fighter proud. Kix tried to dodge. She failed. The pan connected with her shoulder with a sound like a gong, and the weapons officer went down hard, her weapon skittering across the floor. You know what the best part is? Morgan said conversationally, stepping over Kix's prone form. Cast iron is non-stick if you season it properly. Also great for hitting intruders. Zek'mar tried to grab her. This was his biggest mistake of the day, and that was saying something. Morgan twisted, used some kind of leverage technique that should not have worked given their size difference. And suddenly Zek'mar was airborne. He landed on the kitchen table, which collapsed under his weight. That table was my grandmother's, Morgan informed him. Then she pulled out a phone, an actual communication device, and she was making a call, right there, in the middle of their fight. Hey Sarah. Yeah, it is Morgan. Listen, I have got 4 idiots in costumes breaking into my house. Can you come out here? Bring your Trent gun. They are doing some kind of roleplay thing and it has gotten out of hand. We are not in costumes. Zek'mar protested from the wreckage of the table. Yeah, they are really committed to the bit, Morgan continued into the phone. One of them looks like a giant mantis. Another one is like a lizard person. Very detailed work. Anyway, they kicked in my door, so I am pressing charges. See you in 10? Great. She hung up. Did you just call for backup? Kix asked weakly from the floor. I called animal control, Morgan corrected. Well, technically Sarah is a wildlife ranger, but close enough. Zek'mar tried to stand, reaching for his weapon. Morgan's hand came up with the skillet again, and he froze. Do not, she said slowly, make me hit you again. This is my good pan. I cook eggs in this. I do not want alien DNA messing up the seasoning. You are insane, Zek'mar said. I am a farmer with property damage and a ruined schedule, Morgan corrected. There is a difference. Zek'mar looked at his crew. Vaughn was still on the floor, crying about his eyes. Thren was trapped under books. Kix was holding her shoulder and glaring at everyone. They had been defeated by one middle-aged human woman with kitchen supplies. Retreat, he said quietly. Back to the ship. Oh, now you want to leave? Morgan asked. After destroying my barn, my door, my toaster, my table and my afternoon? Sure, go ahead. But you are not going far. They limped outside, supporting each other, and that was when the situation went from bad to apocalyptic. The clearing around Morgan's farm was no longer clear. Somehow, in the span of 20 minutes, it had filled with Earth wildlife. Real, actual, terrifying Earth wildlife. A black bear stood near the tree line watching them with the kind of casual interest that suggested it was deciding whether they were worth the effort. 2 wolves, or maybe they were coyotes, Zek'mar could not tell and did not care, were circling the ship with clear territorial intentions. And the geese? Oh, by all the stars in the galaxy, the geese. There were 6 of them, white and grey, emerging from a pond that Zek'mar had not even noticed was there. They moved in formation, necks extended, making sounds that could only be described as honking fury. Why are there so many animals? Thren whispered. Run, Zek'mar shouted. The geese charged first. Despite everything they had faced, nothing had prepared them for the sheer aggressive audacity of Earth geese defending their territory. They came in low and fast, wings spread, beaks snapping. Thren screamed again. It was becoming his signature move. The bear decided they were interesting after all, and started ambling toward them, with that deceptive slowness that meant it could absolutely catch them, if it wanted to. Then a vehicle arrived, kicking up dust, and a woman in a ranger uniform stepped out holding what looked like a weapon. Sarah, presumably Morgan's friend. Hold still, Sarah called out. These exotic animals need to be sedated before they hurt someone. We are not animals, Kix shouted, dodging a goose. We are sentient beings, really committed to the act, Sarah said admiringly, raising her tranquilizer gun. Points for staying in character. She fired. The dart hit Vaughn, who was already having the worst day of his life. He looked down at the dart in his chest, looked up at Sarah, and simply fainted. Got one, Sarah announced proudly. On the porch, Morgan had appeared with a large glass of lemonade, ice clinking pleasantly. She sat down on the porch swing and watched the chaos with the expression of someone watching a particularly entertaining sporting event. You doing okay out there? She called. Zek'mar dodged a wolf, leaped over a charging goose, and ran directly into the bear, which huffed at him with breath that smelled like fish and disappointment. He stumbled backward, tripped over Thren, and they both went down in a heap. Sarah fired another tranquilizer dart. It missed Kix and hit one of the geese instead, which only seemed to make it angrier. This planet, Kix said, backing toward the ship while fending off 2 geese with her empty weapon, is a nightmare. This entire planet is a nightmare. It is not just the humans, it is everything. The plants probably eat meat. The rocks probably have teeth. Some of the plants do eat meat, actually, Morgan called helpfully from the porch. Venus flytraps. Very common. Zek'mar finally understood. The warning labels, the extreme caution notices, the Deathworlder classification. It was not just that humans were dangerous. It was that humans had evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill everything else, and they had somehow thrived anyway. They had not just survived, they had domesticated the nightmare creatures, lived alongside them, and called it normal. Back to the ship, he screamed, Everyone back to the ship, now. They ran. A panicked scramble of limbs and screaming, pursued by geese, watched by wolves and judged by a bear. Sarah fired more tranquilizer darts, mostly missing. Morgan sipped her lemonade and waved. "Come back anytime," she shouted. "Bring a deposit for the damages." They reached the ship, practically throwing themselves up the ramp. Zek'mar slapped the door controls, and the ramp sealed behind them with blessed finality. Outside through the view screen they could see Morgan still sitting on her porch, completely calm, surrounded by aggressive wildlife that apparently just existed there normally. "Leave," Zek'mar ordered. "Leave now. Leave this system. Leave this entire sector." "What about Vaughn?" Thren asked. They looked at the view screen. Vaughn was unconscious in the dirt, covered in tranquilizer darts, while Sarah examined him with professional curiosity and made notes on a clipboard. "Vaughn made his choice," Zek'mar said grimly. "Lift off." The Salvation's Edge rose into the sky, leaving behind one unconscious medic, several confused animals, an annoyed farmer, and a wildlife ranger, who was already calling the local zoo about exotic animal pickup. The medical bay of the Salvation's Edge looked like a war zone, which, Zek'mar reflected bitterly, was essentially what it was. Thren sat on an examination table, covered in scratches from Admiral Cluckington's sustained assault. His pride was more damaged than his face, but the face was still pretty bad. "A rooster," Thren said flatly, staring at nothing. "I was defeated by a rooster. I have to live with this knowledge for the rest of my life." Kix was in worse shape. Her shoulder was swollen where the cast-iron skillet had connected, already turning a spectacular shade of purple. She held an ice pack against it and glared at everyone and everything. "I am a weapons specialist," she muttered. "I trained for 7 years. I have certifications, awards, commendations. And I was knocked unconscious by cookware." "At least you were not pepper-sprayed," Thren offered weakly. They both looked at the empty chair where Vaughn should have been. The medic was still planet-side, drugged into unconsciousness, probably being poked and prodded by Earth's so-called animal control. "We have to go back for him," Kix said, though her heart clearly was not in it. "No," Zek'mar said firmly, "we do not." Vaughn understood the risks when he signed up for military service. "The risks of being tranquilized and abandoned on a death world?" Thren asked. "All risks," Zek'mar said. "It is in the contract. Very small print." The ship shuddered as they broke atmosphere, and Zek'mar pulled up the damage report. One hull panel was scorched from weapons fire, 3 systems were running at partial capacity, and the landing gear had somehow goose feathers stuck in it. "How did the geese even reach the landing gear?" Zek'mar wondered aloud. "They could fly," Kix said. "Of course they could fly. Nightmare birds on a nightmare planet that can pursue you into the sky. Why would I expect anything different?" The view screen showed Morgan's farm getting smaller below them, a tiny dot of land surrounded by forests and fields. Zek'mar thought he could see her still on the porch, probably still drinking lemonade, completely unbothered by the afternoon's events. "I have a question," Kix said quietly. "If humans are this dangerous, if their entire planet is this dangerous, why are they not ruling the galaxy already? Why are they not out here conquering everything?" Zek'mar had been wondering the same thing. He pulled up Earth's file again, scrolling through the data, and found his answer in a footnote. "It says here they are still working on getting along with each other," he read. "Apparently they have over 200 separate nation-states, and approximately 7,000 languages. They spend most of their time arguing about borders and resources, and something called politics. So, they are too busy fighting themselves to fight anyone else?" Thren, "It appears so. That is terrifying, actually," Kix said slowly, "because eventually they will stop fighting each other." The 3 of them sat in silence, contemplating a future where humans turned their attention outward, where they brought their persistence and endurance and sheer stubborn refusal to stay down into the wider galaxy. "We should warn people," Thren suggested. "Oh, we will," Zek'mar promised. "We absolutely will." The official incident report took Zek'mar 3 hours to write. He rewrote it 4 times, each version sounding more unbelievable than the last. Finally he settled on the truth, because lying would only get someone else hurt. Incident report, Mission 47B, he typed. Specimen retrieval, Earth. Mission status catastrophic failure. Casualties. 1. Medic Fawn, captured by local authorities, presumed alive but unavailable for retrieval. Injuries. Multiple. Pilot Thrin, lacerations from avian assault. Weapons Officer QX, blunt force trauma from cooking implement. Commander Zek'mar, bruising, dignity damage, psychological trauma. Target status. Not acquired. Target remains on planet, armed and extremely dangerous. He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, trying to find words that would adequately convey what had happened. Additional notes. All warning labels regarding species classification were accurate and should be taken seriously. Human specimen Morgan Chen demonstrated extreme resistance to standard stun weapons, tactical awareness, improvised weapon proficiency, and zero fear. Local fauna, including but not limited to chickens, dogs, geese, bears and wolves, provided unexpected support to target. Recommend immediate reclassification of Earth from restricted to prohibited status. Further recommend no contact with human species without significant military support or, preferably, never. Conclusion: Deathworlder classification is not bureaucratic exaggeration, it is mercy. Humans evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill them for millions of years. And they won. They did not just survive, they thrived. They made friends with the creatures that should have eaten. They trained the birds that attacked us to lay eggs for breakfast. They live alongside bears and wolves, and call it normal. Do not underestimate them. Do not approach them. Do not assume they are weak because they look soft. They are not soft. Nothing about them is soft. Zek'mar hit send before he could second-guess himself. 3 days later, a response came back from command. It was brief. Message received. Earth reclassified to prohibited status. Coalition vote scheduled regarding human contact protocols. Also, we received an insurance claim from a Morgan Chen of Earth regarding property damage to 1 barn, 1 door, 1 table, 1 toaster, and emotional distress to multiple animals. She is requesting 47,000 credits for repairs and suffering. Claims adjuster agrees amount is reasonable. Payment will be deducted from your mission bonus. Additionally, Medic Vaughn has been recovered. He was found at a facility called a zoo where humans were feeding him something called corn dogs and taking photographs. He reports the experience was humiliating, but the corn dogs were excellent. Return to base for debriefing and psychiatric evaluation. Zek'mar read the message 3 times. Then he looked at Thrin and Kix, who had been reading over his shoulder. 47,000 credits, Kix said. She charged us for emotional distress to the animals, Thrin added. The animals that attacked us, Kix clarified. Yes, those animals. Zek'mar closed his eyes and tried to remember a time when he had been confident, when he had looked at a mission brief and thought it would be easy, when he had seen warning labels and dismissed them as bureaucratic nonsense. That version of himself felt like a different person, a naive person. A person who had never met Morgan Chen or her rooster, or her cast iron skillet. I am requesting a transfer, he announced. Somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, somewhere that humans will never ever go. Do those places exist? Thrin asked. Zek'mar thought about Morgan sitting on her porch, thought about the files that mentioned humans had already sent primitive probes to nearby stars, thought about the inevitable day when they would stop arguing among themselves and look outward. No, he admitted, probably not. He pulled up the warning labels one final time, the ones he had ignored, the ones that had tried to save him from his own arrogance. Extreme caution advised. Deathworlder species. Do not engage without proper preparation. Proper preparation, Zek'mar now understood, would have been an army, or better yet, a strongly worded letter of introduction and a lot of apologizing in advance. He made a note in his personal log, a reminder for his future self, for anyone who might come after him and make the same mistakes. Never doubt the warning labels, he wrote. They are there for a reason. The reason is Morgan Chen and her entire nightmare planet of death and horror that locals call home. Respect the Deathworlders. Fear the Deathworlders. And whatever you do, do not set their barns on fire. He saved the file, set course for home, and tried very hard not to think about the fact that somewhere behind them, Morgan Chen was probably already back to work, fixing fences, feeding chickens, and living her completely normal Earth life. The truly terrifying part was not that she had defeated them. It was that for her, it had just been a Tuesday.